Okay, so let's get right into it. If you really want to understand the political figure, you've got to understand the man first. And to do that, we have to go way back, long before the White House. This is the story of how Donald became Trump. And just so we're clear, this is not going to be another rehash of his time as president. I mean, there are a million of those out there, right? No. We're going to dig into something, well, more fundamental. We're talking about the creation of the persona, the brand, the whole strategy that really made everything else possible. So, that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? How does a real estate developer from Queens, a guy known for his flashy gold towers and for being all over the tabloids, how does he end up in the most powerful office on the planet? Well, to figure that out, we've got to start with the person who shaped him more than anyone else. All right, so to really get a handle on Donald Trump, you have to start with the biggest influence in his life, and that was, without a doubt, his father. This is where it all begins, the killer instinct. So, meet Fred Trump. This guy was the definition of a self-made man, a really tough, ruthless developer who built this huge real estate empire out in the boroughs of New York, E. Trump and Son. He literally started as a carpenter's assistant and just clawed his way up. He mastered the game, buy low, sell high, and work every angle of the system. And you better believe he passed that relentless drive down to his kids. But here's what's so fascinating. The advice he gave Donald wasn't some complex business school lecture. Nope. It all boiled down to one simple core idea. Be a killer. That was it. Don't be weak. Winning is the only thing that matters. And that one piece of advice, it became the absolute bedrock of Donald Trump's entire way of looking at the world. And let me tell you, Donald took that advice to heart. As a kid, he was aggressive. So much so that his dad actually sent him off to military school, hoping it would instill some discipline. And you know what? It kind of worked. Donald absolutely thrived in that super competitive environment. It gave him a way to channel all that aggression. From there, it was off to the Wharton School of Business, getting ready to step into the family business. Okay, so here he is. He's got his father's Be a Killer mantra in his head and a fancy Wharton degree in his hand. He joins the family business, but he's got his eyes on a much bigger prize than Brooklyn and Queens. He wanted to conquer Manhattan. And this, right here, is where we see the beginning of the brand, the building of Trump. You see, one of the very first things he did was a rebrand. E. Trump and Son? It sounded old, kind of stale. So boom, the Trump Organization. And look, this was way more than just a name change. This was a statement of intent. He wasn't just running his dad's company, he was building his own brand. The product wasn't the buildings anymore. The product was him. But if you're going to take on Manhattan, you need a different kind of playbook. And for that, he found a new mentor, a guy named Roy Cohn. Cohn was this legendarily aggressive lawyer and political fixer, the kind of guy you call when you're in real trouble. So when the Department of Justice sues the Trumps for racial discrimination, pretty much every lawyer is saying, settle, make it go away. But not Cohn. Cohn said, no way, we fight. And this right here is a crucial moment. This is where Trump learns the strategy he's going to use for the rest of his life. It's the Roy Cohn playbook. It's simple, really. Step 1, deny everything. Step 2, don't just defend, you attack. You file a huge countersuit and hit back 10 times harder. And the most important rule of all, step 3, never, ever, ever admit you were wrong. In the end, they did settle the case, but they never admitted any guilt. And in Trump's mind, that was a total win. So now he's got this playbook, and he unleashes it on Manhattan. He takes a failing hotel, the Commodore, and turns it into the gleaming Grand Hyatt. Then he builds the project that made him a household name, the opulent, attention-grabbing Trump Tower right on Fifth Avenue. And then comes the art of the deal, the book that took him from just another developer and turned him into a national icon of success. I mean, in the 1980s, he was New York. And you know, buried in that best-selling book is this incredible little piece of foreshadowing. We're talking decades before he ever rode down that famous escalator, but the idea was already percolating. Even way back then, you can see he was thinking about the ultimate deal, the ultimate way to extend the Trump brand. But of course, the high-flying 80s couldn't last forever, right? The 1990s rolled in and brought a devastating crash with them. And the guy who looked totally invincible, he was about to come face-to-face with absolute ruin. This brings us to a really dramatic part of the story, the crash and the comeback. And I don't think people realize just how close to the edge he really was. By the early 90s, he was personally, not business debt, on the hook for $900 million. That's a staggering number. He was right on the brink of total collapse. And it felt like everything was falling apart at the exact same time. He was forced to sell his massive yacht, his airline, the Trump Shuttle. His casinos in Atlantic City, they went bankrupt. And on top of all that, his marriage to Ivana blew up in this huge, messy public tabloid scandal. He was down. He was out. And the same media that he'd played so well for years, they were having a field day with his downfall. But then, something pretty incredible happens. Just 5 years after being almost $1 billion in the red, his net worth was somehow estimated to be back in the black at a positive $700 million. So the question is, how on earth did he pull that off? And this is where he learns maybe the most important lesson of his entire career. It wasn't about the spreadsheets or the accounting. It was about the story. He figured out that people, especially Americans, absolutely love a comeback story. The narrative, the story you tell about your success, is way more powerful than the actual numbers on a balance sheet. So naturally, he wrote a book called The Art of the Comeback and just became a master at selling this idea of his own incredible resilience. Okay, so with that powerful comeback story now part of his brand, the stage was set for his next big transformation. And this one might just be the most important of all. Let's talk about how he became the reality TV star. So this producer, Mark Burnett, he comes to Trump with this idea for a TV show called The Apprentice. And honestly, it was a stroke of genius. It took everything the Trump brand stood for, the big boardroom, the power, the image of success, and packaged it as entertainment for primetime TV. And for a whole new generation of people who had no idea about his failures in the 90s, this show is what defined who Donald Trump was. And the impact was just huge. I mean, think about it. At its peak, you had more than 20 million people tuning in every single week. He reportedly raked in something like $500 million over all the seasons. But the money wasn't even the biggest thing. The real value was what it did for his brand. It grew exponentially. He wasn't just some rich real estate guy anymore. He was, in the minds of millions, America's boss. And that whole persona, it was all perfectly captured in 2 little words: "You're fired." That catchphrase just cemented this image of him as a tough, decisive, no-nonsense leader who makes the hard calls. It was that killer instinct his dad taught him all those years ago, just perfectly repackaged for television. So let's take stock. He's got the killer instinct from his dad. He's got the deny and attack playbook from Roy Cohn. He's mastered the power of the comeback story. And thanks to TV, he's got this national brand as the ultimate decider. All the pieces of the puzzle were finally in place for what would be his most audacious move yet. And really, the 2016 campaign was like a greatest hits of everything he had learned. From that very first moment coming down the escalator, he just threw the political rulebook out the window. He knew exactly how to use controversy to just dominate the news. When that Access Hollywood tape dropped, a thing that would have ended any other campaign, he didn't back down. He went straight to the Roy Cohn playbook, deny and attack his opponents even harder. And it all led to what was, without a doubt, one of the biggest political upsets in modern history. So, at the end of the day, what do you make of this whole journey? You know, maybe the best insight actually comes from Trump himself. When you look at it all, from the killer instinct to the comeback narrative to the reality TV star, what you see is this constant, decades-long process of building and then rebuilding a public persona. A persona that, as he himself once said, maybe he'd rather not analyze too closely.